Tensions and tear gas flaring in Minnesota as anti-ICE chaos boils over. Protesters taking out their anger on federal immigration agents and their vehicles outside of the federal building in Minneapolis Thursday night as the two sides squared off once again.
Almost there.
Oh, wow. The feds are cracking down on the lawlessness, arresting a man accused of being a part of this mob as they broke into and vandalized an FBI vehicle. Homeland Security charging Raul Gutierrez, who they say is a Latin Kings gang member, with stealing a rifle and body armor.
Minnesota, you are not alone, and we will stand up for real accountability, for justice, for all of you and for all of America.
As some progressives call to defund ICE, congressional Democrats held a field hearing in nearby St. Paul today. They point the finger at the Trump administration for the ongoing violence that intensified after an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good in what DHS calls self-defense.
It is increasingly clear that the entire purpose of these actions is to provoke chaos and fear in order to justify invoking the Insurrection Act.
Breaking news late this afternoon. Multiple sources tell CBS News that Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey are under federal investigation. The Department of Justice probe involves allegations of conspiracy to obstruct law enforcement activities. One source said the investigation stems from statements the DFL governor and mayor made about federal agents carrying out the immigration crackdown.
Renee Good! Renee Good! Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
The protesters were reportedly under the impression that the church's pastor was working with federal immigration enforcement. Lemon, for his part, said he had no affiliations with the protesters and was simply trying to report on the latest developments in Minnesota following the shooting death of Renee Good nearly 2 weeks ago.
Shame on you!
I want to play this soundbite from President Trump yesterday as he departed the White House, because he told me that he is not ready to pull the trigger on the Insurrection Act. Here he is. Mr. President, what's your trigger for the Insurrection Act? What's the trigger for the Insurrection Act in Minnesota? What are you waiting for?
Well, the Insurrection Act, which has been used by 48% of the presidents, and if I needed it, I'd use it. I don't think there's any reason right now to use it, but if I needed it, I'd use it. It's very powerful.
Do you agree with that assessment, Greg? Right now, it's not necessary to send in troops?
Aisha, thanks for having me, and it's good to see you. The president is spot on with his comments on the Insurrection Act. The president remains very focused on what's happening here in Minneapolis. He relies on on-the-ground leaders such as me, intelligence reports, and other information to make that decision. But he's spot on when he says, right now, it's not needed. We've got the situation under control, several thousand law enforcement agents here, and we're conducting that Title VIII immigration mission unabated.
To all units, proceed to your post assignments. All units, proceed to your post assignments.
That's the sound of the police! Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the beast!
Yeah, baby, it's episode 15 of Probable Cause on January 20th, 2026. Jeff Norman and Greg Dillon, the FBI whistleblower himself, all dressed up tonight and looking sharp. Our special guest is Rachel Van Landingham. She is a national security law expert, a former judge advocate in the United States Air Force, and she is a professor at Southwestern Law School. Despite all those impressive credits, Rachel is very unpretentious. Look, she just puts Rachel there. None of this professor or Esquire stuff, just plain Rachel. I like that.
Or I'm lazy.
That could be too. Well, Van Landingham is a lot to fit in there, but
It sure is.
Well, Rachel has been with us before on the Whiners, but this is her first time on Probable Cause, and we certainly appreciate it. How are you tonight, Rachel?
I'm great, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me, and it's an honor to be chatting with Greg.
It is.
Rachel, well, thank you for your service. I always like to say that right out of the gate.
Thank you, and I really thank everyone that's serving on active duty and in the Guard right now, as well as reserves, but particularly active duty and Guard, because I think it's fair to say that the vast majority of service members sign up in order to fight our foreign enemies, and the idea of deployments on our U.S. city streets, even though that's always a possibility for our Guard folks, it's still one that's really rare, and it's got to make folks feel really nervous. And so my heart goes out to everyone.
All right, well said. Oh, it was good to get off on a respectful tone. And now that we got that out of the way, let's be irreverent. No, I'm just kidding. We've actually been looking pretty hard at the shooting in Minneapolis on both shows. Last week, we had Andrew Branca on. Are you familiar with Andrew? And on the Whiners, we had, or am I reversing it? We had Bill Shipley. Yeah, no, I'm not reversing it.
That's
Bill
correct.
Shipley, Shipwrecked Crew. Are you familiar with him?
I'm not.
Okay. He tweets under the pseudonym Shipwreck Crew on X. He is a former federal prosecutor. And they, they're not extremists, but they lean towards, being very pro-immigration and, weren't all that sympathetic towards Renee Good. And, they were telling us how to determine whether or not the shooting was lawful. And so I don't want to label you, but I would say you might lean slightly in the other direction. Is that maybe a fair way?
I like to put myself on the idea on the side of what the law requires and compassion, as well as American values and constitutional values. And yes, the shooting of Renee Good, in my mind, I believe was murder and completely unjustified. However, I don't want to make any conclusion, and I don't think the administration should have made any conclusion without a full, thorough, and transparent investigation and analysis of what actually went down. So for me, it's what happened afterwards. I mean, I think her killing is atrocious because we can't divorce it from the overall context of this draconian immigration sweep that's sweeping up U.S. citizens and bringing with it violations of the Fourth Amendment of basic search and seizure laws, and just basically being incredibly dehumanizing. But that being said, right, it's a gross disservice to any kind of investigation and to the individual that did kill Renee Good to prejudge and immediately say she's some domestic terrorist and this was all just self-defense on his part or defense of others, but it's really just been self-defense on his part. Immediately at the highest levels of the White House. I mean, it completely undercuts our faith. And will there ever be an actual investigation? Maybe he was actually justified. Maybe from his particular camera angle, even though I don't think so, but maybe from his angle, he actually had a reasonable belief that he was in fear of serious bodily harm or death from her car. Right. But we will never know that because there's been so much rhetoric, as well as refusal to engage, to cooperate with the local law enforcement for an investigation. So the long story short, long answer there is yes, I'm probably pretty on the other side of some of your earlier guests.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, Rachel, is he knows what to say. Like if he were charged, he knows what to say. It's I don't know how you. Obviously, you would hope somebody testifies truthfully, but we're talking.
I mean, if he's on trial for murder as the defendant, he never has to take the stand, and nor should he have to. I mean, there's objective indicia of actually what went down. There are video cameras, right? There's expert testimony from individuals who have been in that position before. There's a testimony regarding how he was trained, how other individuals were trained for determining what is reasonable. Because he may have honestly feared for his life, But whether or not that fear is reasonable, that's the objective standard.
That's on the right. Well,
Right, and it brings down his actual moral culpability. If he honestly feared for his life, but it wasn't reasonable, it brings it down from murder to manslaughter. Versus if he reasonably feared for his life, then it's no crime at all. Then even if he wasn't right, as long as he was reasonable. But it's going to be very hard to determine reasonableness if the government is prejudging and not conducting a thorough investigation.
But according to those experts, go ahead, Greg.
No. Well, I mean, I wanted to
finish. Let me just finish up on that. But according to those experts, it's not only if it was reasonable for him to have feared for his own safety, he might have feared for the safety of others. And
objectively, right? So it has to be objectively reasonable. First of all, did he honestly fear for his life and for others, right? If he says so, right, there's nothing to contest that typically, but it's the objective analysis, right? It's that component of either defense of self or defense of others. That's where, right, all the evidence comes into play and indicia. But it's not whether a reasonable person in his situation, it's whether or not a reasonable ICE officer, right? Because of Supreme Court jurisprudence here. So it narrows the bucket, right? It makes it even harder to find it unreasonable. But I think it's almost impossible now because of the taint that's been put on this. And so it was the former Tom Homan was the only individual from this administration that I actually heard say the right thing. I didn't think I'd be agreeing with Tom Homan, but he said the right thing after this shooting, which is, I'm not going to prejudge it. Let the investigation play out. And that's exactly what a professional law enforcement official should say.
And it's not even that hard. It's not complicated. You should know. They should know that. But what I wanted to mention as far as fearing for others is that he had been dragged by a car for about 50 yards a few months ago when he was reaching in to make an arrest. And his colleague was doing more or less the same thing at that moment, reaching into the car. So that might be one of the people whose safety he was concerned about. He would have a higher.
And it really raises, sorry, Jeff. It raises the question of why are they being trained on that? Why have they been trained to reach in people's cars? I mean, from other law enforcement personnel who have been in the media and making comments saying that's not appropriate training. They're not supposed to be doing that, et cetera. But to your point, that doesn't mean what he did was not reasonable in that circumstance. However, right, that determination of reasonableness needs to be and should be determined by a totality of circumstances after a full and fair investigation. And that's what I fear we'll never have here.
Well, let's ask the former cop. I mentioned Greg as a former FBI agent. He also was a police officer for the Brantford Police Department. How are you trained? If you order somebody to get out of a car to make an arrest, how are you trained to respond? Is this dragging somebody out something that's prohibited or cautioned against?
When it came to motor vehicle stops, there are so many variables in each scenario. The location of the car, what's in proximity, traffic, pedestrians, crossfire of other law enforcement officers. Is the car running? Is the car turned off? There's a number of things, but and I don't know if there is a standard accepted practice about reaching in. I'm not a fan of it. I would never recommend it unless the car is already in the off position and you can safely retrieve those keys without putting yourself in jeopardy. But I just wanted to, before we got off track, ask Rachel, you mentioned sort of like a predetermination being made by the White House, but I've seen several prominent political figures, Democratic, that keep describing this as the murder of, Renee Good. And would you not agree that when you say murder, you predetermined that it is a criminal homicide?
Yes, but let's ask who's saying it, right? Me as a law professor saying it is very different than the White House, who is the executive branch, who is the officials, right, charged with conducting the actual investigation of their own.
Well, the White House isn't conducting the investigation.
Well, no, the White House doesn't conduct the investigation, but they're the head of the executive branch that owns DHS that's conducting the investigation along with the Department of Justice. So I think the appropriateness of labeling it depends on and using the term murder depends on who's using it, right?
Okay. Well, if the governor and the mayor describe it as a murder, and the AG in Minnesota answers to them, how is that different than what's going on with the White House and the DOJ answering to them?
Well, it's different because it's not their agent, right? It's somebody else that was working.
No. But I'm saying there's going to be a criminal investigation conducted regardless.
Well, I would hope so, but
whose agent it is.
an investigation being conducted right now from everything that the White House has said. It seems like a sham investigation. Number two, I take your point. I think the inappropriate response would be from any elected official would be what seems to be murder based on what I've seen on the news right now, but we're going to conduct an investigation, right? I think for someone on the executive branch on the federal side right now to call it, to say what they're saying is very different than the governor of Minnesota saying, hey, look, this sure looks like murder to me, and I hope there's a full and fair investigation, because that was his citizen that was just gone down. Yeah,
I understand, right? But they're not saying it looks like murder to me. They're saying the murder of.
Right.
So
right. I think that should be
confirmation of their decision.
Yeah, should they be more nuanced in their language? Absolutely, but it's a far cry. You can't equate what they're doing to calling her Antifa and calling for investigations of her partner. The day that this shooting occurred.
Well, some of those officials in Minnesota in general tend to behave more like activists than responsible representatives. Keith Ellison is no prize, and the mayor, who now famously at the press conference, who said ICE should get the fuck out of Minneapolis. Yeah. I think the language is no big deal. I don't care about if people swear or not, but to me that's not even a full idea, because if ICE leaves, what then? It doesn't seem to enter his mind or the mind of a lot of other people who are saying abolish ICE, abolish ICE. We don't even know if he means somebody else or some other agency should handle immigration law enforcement, or if he's saying immigration law enforcement just shouldn't happen at all. You know what I mean? What do you think, Rachel? I take it you're not a big fan of ICE. What would be?
No, I haven't liked ICE because of their lack of professionalism and insufficient, in my mind, insufficient training for a long time now under both Democratic and Republican presidents. However, I think it's irresponsible of that mayor to say what he said, because it exacerbates, right, the situation. It's extreme rhetoric that just doesn't help. Right now, I believe in the rule of law. The rule of law right now under federalism says, hey, we have these law enforcement agents called ICE agents, and under federal law, if you don't like federal law, go talk to Congress about the Immigration and Naturalization Act, right? That have the legal authority and right to stop individuals for whom they have reasonable belief are not here, if in public, in order to ask them questions if they have reasonable belief that they're not here with proper legal authority, or if they're actually executing one of their administrative warrants, or if they have probable cause to believe that someone isn't here lawfully. So to say, just get the fuck out of here, I understand and empathize with that, right? Because anyone watching the videos of Renee Good getting killed it was horrific. I didn't want my teenage boys to see it, but that doesn't mean that I think his language is helpful, right? I think our politics have gotten to such a point where people are saying things just to get the immediate soundbite and catering to their base instead of actually saying, let's be reasonable adults here. You have a job, ICE, we know that. And can I bring something up, Jeff and Greg? I don't have the video. I should have sent this video to you earlier. I just saw it. A friend of mine just sent me a video they got off of, I believe it was X, of a female immigration attorney, at least someone claiming to be a female immigration attorney, getting an ICE agent's face, yelling. She did yell, get the fuck out of here, get the fuck out of here. These are my clients. They're here legally. And well, first of all, she articulated the law incorrectly. So I already was not on her side, but I really didn't like her aggressive tactics. That's not helpful. The ICE agents have a job to do. You may not agree with the job, but they were hired. They're lawful. They're not criminal thugs, right? We can't label them that accurately. You can label anybody, anything if you want. But the aggressiveness needs to be dialed back, even though I understand for someone whose clients are perhaps about to be ripped out of the United States despite her best efforts, and perhaps not lawfully ripped out of the United States, because this administration does not have a good track record on actually following the due process required by the law regarding immigration. I understand her concern, but her tactics made me actually feel for that ICE agent in that video, to say, hey, that's not it's not the most productive way to go about this.
Well, Shipwrecked Crew made two suggestions that would improve the situation, and playing off of something Tom Homan said. And it makes so much sense to me that I wonder if maybe there's some other aspect to the story that I'm missing, because it seems to me like this should be a big story if it's true. Here's the two ways that he said the situation could be improved dramatically. One is if the governor of Minnesota were to activate the National Guard, then many of the ICE agents who are there for security purposes would no longer have to perform that role. They could either leave or just focus more on immigration enforcement instead of security. And the second thing is what Homan said, is that they won't let ICE agents into the jails. And if they were to be able to go into the jails, they could prioritize people who are actually criminals, and they wouldn't have to be on the street so much. And he says when they go into homes after, a particular person who may be a known criminal, they have to take 5 or 6 others who may be living with them who aren't criminals if they're illegal. Do you agree that those are two ways the situation could be improved? And if so, to a significant degree?
I'm going to take the second one first. And the second one, I don't think it's a natural conclusion that B will follow A, that just if ICE agents are allowed in the jails, they're going to stop their draconian sweeps in the homes, because you've got Stephen Miller up there at the White House with these arbitrary numbers saying more and more and more. So I don't think allowing them in the jails is going to stop the other thing. Maybe that's something that could be negotiated, but I really don't think that's realistic based on this administration's continued conduct, that means they will stop their other really inhumane, it seems, and
I don't know if you can see this headline. I don't think Tom Homan actually made a real explicit firm offer. This is just the way the Washington Examiner worded the headline. But this is something that I was thinking what you said. You said the magic word, negotiate. I think that the administration to some extent would be obligated, if it's all public, that, if Minnesota said, hey, if we do this, cut back on it. Don't you think?
Well, they're not obligated by what? Just their word? I mean, this administration has bald-faced lied in federal court. So I'm not sure I would trust the administration to do what it would say, but I would want to negotiate, because we're not just going to shoot our way out of this, right? I mean, This is a tense situation. There does need to be some reasonable people who actually have some credibility that can say, hey, look, let's work this. Maybe we can squeeze and get the numbers that the White House wants if you allow us into the actual jails. And just because someone's sitting in jail doesn't mean they're actually guilty of anything. So let's look at that. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy, right? Someone's only guilty of something they're actually typically convicted. And this administration,
Rachel, they don't have to be convicted to be picked up on a federal immigration warrant.
No, of course not. But the administration, campaigned on the idea they're not going to go after little grandma that's been here for 20 years and works in a kitchen, has never committed a crime herself, just because she's here undocumented. They're only going to go after the rapists, the murderers, folks that committed crimes, for example, in Venezuela, and are gang members and flooded our streets. That's my point, right? Yes, the woman that's been here for 20 years and is here without proper documentation, has she violated a civil law? Yes. But those aren't the ones that the administration says are going after by going into our jails. Okay, so I'm saying just because someone's in jail, let's say there's an alleged DUI, they're picked up on a DUI. Just because they're arrested for DUI because there's probable cause they were on drunk driving doesn't mean they actually were drunk driving.
It doesn't make any difference if they have a detainer lodged against them with a deportation order.
It's the difference regarding who this administration is going after. And my point is, I don't think by going into the jails, they're going to suddenly say, we're just going to stop going after numbers.
It's certainly going to reduce the encounters in the community. It has to.
Well, I would like to see experiments of that. I would like them to try. I think perhaps they could try, but I'm not sure. So what's the pushback against doing that? So let's try to put ourselves in the mind of the local mayor and the local governor. Is it purely political? That if they do they also risk? And Greg, I ask you this with your law enforcement experience. do they risk degrading the trust of the communities for when they call someone? Let's say a woman's getting the crap beaten out by her husband, but she's afraid if he comes and gets arrested, he's going to disappear because ICE agents are going to be sitting at the jail for him. Is it going to make communities perhaps less willing to call the police regarding bread and butter criminality?
So, Rachel, you're a fan of domestic violence? I mean, I'm a little confused there.
Don't even put that in your mind. I just said there's been numerous experts that have prognosticated and put out there that local law enforcement doesn't want to cooperate with ICE, and I'm saying is it would allowing them in the jails be local law enforcement cooperating with ICE because of the fear that it will degrade the trust of local community. The local community won't call when they should be calling to get someone who's beating up his wife, right, or his domestic partner, etc. Because they don't.
How does that compute in your mind as being a fan of domestic violence? She's afraid that people won't report it, is what you said.
When I want it reported, of course I do. And they may fear that they want the guy gone, but they don't want him deported, right? And so therefore the local law enforcement, the trust with local law enforcement will be degraded. I'm just wondering what is on the side of, right, we've been talking about, okay, perhaps ICE, this will help ICE. You're saying lower the temperature, lower violent encounters on the streets, if they can actually go into the jails and find folks there. I'm just trying to figure out what's the pushback against that. And it seems to be one of the pushbacks is that if local law enforcement cooperates with ICE, that it will lower the trust that's needed for safe policing.
Right. Well, any cost benefit analysis that's real includes all the costs and all the benefits.
Right.
So that's certainly worth including on the list.
And I'm not a policing expert, right?
If we want to reduce the risk of violence or a situation where someone gets unnecessarily injured or killed, the best thing to do is to allow two ICE agents, to go in and lodge their federal retainer or detainer against the person that is incarcerated. And this used to happen all the time in Connecticut. And someone would get arrested. We make them aware of it. They would come down with the paperwork, and there'd be a DNR, do not release, this subject before notifying ICE. Then they had 48 hours to show up and take the person into custody. That is very safe. The person is already in custody. He is not armed. He doesn't have a chance to flee. And it's an administrative custody release. Or the alternative is to get 8 to 10 guys and surround the house and make entry and go through the house with, children possibly inside and elderly people inside, and now start trying to figure out, is the person here? And if he is, he's in custody. But what about you? Do you have paperwork? Are you here legally? Are you here legally? Are you here legally? Are the kids here legally? This creates more chaos and more potential for a violent outcome. I would think we'd be trying to do just the opposite and increase the number of bad people being arrested while overlooking some of the people maybe that have no criminal history but are here illegally. That's my thought.
And there's no guarantee that those are the individuals that are sitting in jail. And there's no guarantee that there won't be the boomerang effect of lowering the trust of the community.
But when you're saying no guarantee of the person in jail, they either have a deportation order pending or they don't. It's binary. It's not maybe they do.
Well, so I mean, it depends. So what's the proposal? The ICE agents just going to walk through the jail at any moment and start questioning everybody that's in there? Or is the proposal, hey, if you get someone in here that's on this list, right, that we've already given the due process and given that, right, then we'll go in, right? And I can see, so if it's more discreet, sure, I can see your point of doing that. But I also question the ability of them. I mean, there's a choice to be forcibly entering someone's home when there's family and children.
Well, that's the alternative. If they're released, they're going to track them down to their last known address and attempt to make an apprehension, which increases.
Right, but doesn't allow them to forcibly enter their home either, right?
If they get a search warrant, they can certainly do it.
Well, yeah, they have to get a search warrant, and most of the time they don't have the search warrant, right? They can knock on the doors.
I don't know. Do you know that for a fact that they don't have search warrants? I don't know that. I'm just saying.
if they have, I'm saying that the legal standard, of course, if they actually go through and get the search warrant. Otherwise, right, then they have to go through the paces. I'd rather have them. I mean,
my recollection of the case law at the time was if it's the person's legal residence and you believe the person is on the premises currently, then you can make forced entry without
absolutely not. Absolutely not. They absolutely need a search warrant issued by a federal judge that says, that says, yes, you have probable cause to believe that this person, that they already have that is here unlawfully, and and you have, and you believe that this is their residence. Therefore, because usually a search warrant, an arrest, basically getting an arrest warrant for their home, right? So the simple federal administrative retainer agreement would not be enough for them to forcibly enter the home. They can knock on the door, right? But they can't force their way in and start questioning everybody. The folks can just stay in their house unless
they can secure the premises and then obtain a federal search warrant and go in.
Right.
Yep.
I'm not sure I can find the clip while we're talking, but when Bill Shipley made that point about, how it was very fruitful when he was a prosecutor, that like once a week, I asked him, okay, so I get that you're saying it's low-hanging fruit, so to speak, but how much fruit was there? And maybe you remember, Greg, I think he said...
I'm sorry, Jeff, I didn't get to hear Shipley.
Okay, yeah.
That was the Whiners.
All right, there's two different shows here, and I'm conflating them in my mind. I think, right. So I said, well, how much fruit is there? And he was a prosecutor, I think, in the Fresno area years ago, a long time ago. And I think he said like once a week he would get called from, well, it wasn't ICE then, but whatever the federal agency was in charge of immigration. And they would turn over about 20 people. And it was very smooth, very easy. So he's saying, considering what the situation is now, there's many, many thousands of people in that situation. I'll try to get the clip while we're talking, but I'm not sure I can. But anyway, we didn't even get to the topic that we planned to discuss yet,
right?
Which is the Insurrection Act. Of course, if we take Trump at his word, which nobody should ever do, maybe there's no need to discuss it because he said he's not going to invoke it, or he said not yet anyway. But a lot of people are very worried about it and talking about the possibility of it. So why don't you start, Rachel, by just saying what the Insurrection Act is?
Sure, and I'll precede it with the fact that what Trump talks about does need to be met with discussion and concern because he floats trial balloons. And he floated the Insurrection Act trial balloon back in 2020 during the George Floyd protests. And he was talked off the ledge at that point. And ever since, whenever he's brought it up, he has gotten even some bipartisan resistance, right? Like, whoa, before you go there. So I think it's very important that folks say, whoa, and push back, because that seems to have been, between Friday and today, right? He already seems to have been walking it back. So the Insurrection Act actually is a series of federal statutes, a series of federal provisions that implement Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, authority that gives to Congress it gives Congress the constitutional authority to make laws to call forth the militia in times of invasion or insurrection. And that's its fundamental constitutional grounding for Congress to have passed a series of laws that have been updated over time since our country became what it is today. And it allows it's a break glass in time of emergency. What it does is it allows the president, in proclaiming a type of insurrection, a type of emergency, it's not always an insurrection, that the president can then use the military or federalized National Guard. So once the National Guard is federalized, they are no different than the active duty military, but it allows the president to use either. It gives him an authority to federalize the National Guard, separate and distinct from the authority that the Supreme Court just found in the Chicago case, Trump v. Illinois case, under 10 U.S.C. 12406. It's a separate authority, right? Because the Supreme Court just said, "Hey, you didn't properly follow that. This is completely separate." It says, "Hey, Mr. President, you can use." It's pretty nebuliously worded, and again, it's 5 different provisions. You can break glass and use the military as a domestic policing force, essentially, when you really need to. when there's some kind of insurrection, when there's these unlawful assemblages and conspiracies against state authority, when state authority has been broken down or federal authority is broken down, or you need to enforce federal law, right? The constitutional rights of American citizens are being violated. So there's quite a bit of, I know we could put the verbiage up, and I do so in class, but there are quite a few exceptions.
Well, isn't being overwhelmed one of the conditions too? I don't know if that's the legal wording, but I'm thinking of the LA riots. They weren't like trying to overtake.
Sure, and so there's actually a couple different provisions. So one of them is the one from LA, and that's the last time the Insurrection Act was invoked. That is a provision that says when a governor asks you, Mr. President, when a governor asks you, because the governor himself has been, or herself has been, their forces have been overwhelmed by, thank you, I don't have my glasses on, has been overwhelmed. You can call it, you can ask the president to send in the troops. And so Governor Wilson at the time, Pete Wilson, asked the president to send in troops from Camp Pendleton, Marines, et cetera, because there had already been, I mean, I think at one point, what was the final total? I mean, over 60 people were killed in the LA riots, millions of dollars worth of property damage. And so the governor himself asked for that.
Well, let me interrupt you, because something that I'm wondering about. I don't know if you lived in LA then, but I did.
I did not.
And I wasn't in the heart of the action, but I have firsthand observation that it was. Well, I don't have firsthand observation actually in Minneapolis, but it sure seems like it was a much greater degree of disorder in LA than there is right now in Minneapolis.
You had people dying and buildings burning down, and you had a governor requesting the aid.
Well, that's my question, though, Rachel. Why was there a need to invoke the Insurrection Act? Couldn't they have just activated the National Guard without doing that?
No, Pete Wilson had already sent in the Guard. The Guard wanted additional help.
Oh, this is on top of that. Okay, all right.
He had already activated. I mean, he had already put them on. They were already got in. They were sending in. They're like, we think this is so huge because LA is so populated and so huge. We think we're going to need help, right?
God,
and
yeah, it
not
wasn't instead
going in and arresting people, but the help on the perimeter and security, et cetera. And so that was one of the classic areas in which the Department of Justice has advised the president in longstanding policy that, hey, look, one of the main areas that you can do this is when a governor asks for the help. They really need the help in dealing with this. And that is not problematic to most Americans because it doesn't upset the federalism balance of states are responsible for maintaining law and order in their states. And you send in the troops, and if local law enforcement like LAPD can't handle it, then it's up to Governor Newsom to nationalize the National Guard. And in June, Governor Newsom had not decided yet that the situation required him to send in the National Guard. Instead, the president just short-circuited it and said, okay, through Secretary Hegseth, hey, we're gonna activate the National Guard and send them in anyway. And we're gonna send in 700 Marines from Camp Pendleton. And he did so without invoking the Insurrection Act. And that was found to have been an unlawful use of that separate statute I mentioned. And the critical part I should have mentioned about the Insurrection Act from the very get-go is it provides the one clear statutory exception to the military being used as a domestic police force, to the military being able to enforce the law. So I just want to remind your listeners that National Guard units, when they work for their governor, always have the ability to enforce law, to engage in law enforcement, if under state law, if the governor chooses to use them in that way, right? Which is why Governor Newsom in this past June, and I was here and I was downtown during these, Governor Newsom could have sent in the National Guard, and that National Guard could have been used for crowd control, for activities that are regulatory, prescriptive, or compulsory, which are the three things that are considered law enforcement by our courts, and to enforce the law, including arrest people. But he hadn't. But once that National Guard was federalized by Trump, and the Marines, who were always federalized because they're active duty, they cannot engage in law enforcement. And why not? Because we fought a revolutionary war against King George III, because we don't want the king to be able to use troops, the military, against we the people. And so
is that the Posse Comitatus Act? Is that what?
And so that long-standing aversion is codified in what's called the Posse Comitatus Act, which actually didn't come into fruition until Reconstruction, when a bunch of Southern senators really wanted the Army to stop occupying the South because they wanted to segregate and engage in gross Jim Crow laws and racial discrimination through their laws. So the actual immediate impetus for the Posse Comitatus Act is not a proud one for America, but the overall idea is one that's long been. You can find it in the Federalist Papers. Is deeply enshrined in the United States way of doing business, which is the military. Whether or not they're active duty troops or National Guard that's activated, they're to go fight our foreign enemies. They're not here to police us. If they're going to be here to police us, it better be because it's necessary. So besides a governor requesting the president to be able to use to invoke the Insurrection Act so that troops can be, so that the National Guard can be federalized or active duty troops sent in and engage in law enforcement. Another big category is, what about if the state itself is blocking the enforcement of federal law? And that's what we saw with Little Rock and the attempts and the judicial order from the Supreme Court on down to desegregate schools in America. And it was the state itself that was blocking the enforcement or blocking the execution of federal law. That's where you had 3 different presidents, and I think you've just put up a list, that invoked the Insurrection Act to enforce federal law regarding civil rights. And so it was the government, it was the law, it was the state itself that was blocking those laws. And then you also had the Insurrection Act invoked regarding to provide protection for civil rights marchers as well during the same era.
Well, the Little Rock situation might be the closest. I mean, I'd like to know what you think Trump's strongest argument might be. But what I'm thinking is, I don't know that you used the word blocking the law in Little Rock, but something that's kind of analogous to blocking it is, well, there's 2 different questions. One is this a reason potentially? And the second question would be, well, I guess it's a matter of degrees. But before we get to whether or not it's that egregious at this point, is it potentially a legitimate reason if the ICE agents are getting attacked by civilians and the locals are failing to protect them sufficiently?
Well, the ICE agents, to my knowledge, that have not been able to have not been blocked from continuing to engage in their jobs in Minneapolis, and so federal law is not being impeded. I mean, it's not being impeded by the state the same way it was for public schools that were funded by the state that were closing their doors to African American children. So I think just factually, it's a very different scenario. If ICE was prevented from by the either active actions by local law enforcement in Minneapolis, or just their failure, right, act by omission, their failure to stop individuals from obstructing, and peacefully protesting is not obstructing, right? There's obstruction and interference of a law enforcement officer in their duties is a factual scenario that is different than peaceful protesting.
But we saw, and I'm not, Rachel,
and there has been some obstruction, right? But has it risen to the level that requires the Insurrection Act?
Well,
yes, by the pure language of the law, anything rises to it almost, because the law is so broadly written to vest such vast discretion with the president. But normatively speaking, it has not been used, right, in such, and I would say it would be an abuse, it has not been used in such a situation. It's got to get far, it has to get far worse. So yes,
how far it has to go.
Right, and that's the problem, is that then the Congress.
It's not a problem, really.
Well, it is a problem when you have a president that's threatened to abuse the law to use federal troops against we the people. That's the problem.
Has he threatened to abuse the law, or has he threatened to use the law?
But Greg, it's potentially a problem if he invokes it and then it gets challenged. That's the issue. It'll probably get challenged.
It would be immediately challenged, and immediately the courts are going to say, Mr. President, you get vast deference here, right? Like he did with 12406, but it's not zero. It's not 100% deference. The courts have a role here. and there's better be a colorable basis. And when you look at and compare it to past precedent, it is very different. It hasn't reached that level yet. I wish Congress had actually cleaned up the law a bit and provided greater granularity and done their job, because they've been urged to do this for years and years and years. This has been a problem waiting to happen. I do think that the pushback, though, the fear that it's going to get challenged and he might not win by the time it goes up to the Supreme Court, and he might not like the answer that he wants. I think that's one of the biggest, deterrent factors keeping him from using this. And I think there are Republicans that are deeply, deeply nervous about this, because what goes on in Minneapolis doesn't stay in Minneapolis, right? So anytime an ICE officer is actually truly obstructed, because there is some obstruction, the vast majority I don't think is obstruction, but there has been incidents of obstructions. I mean, every time there's obstruction, that the president can send in the Marines to that city. That just.
Rachel, let me ask you a question. If every single day streets are being blocked, and every single time it happens, ICE on-scene commander makes a call to the chief and says, it's illegal for people to assemble in the street. That is not part of a peaceful protest. They don't have a permit to take over the street. They don't have a justification in blocking the street. It's a crime. It's illegal. We're asking that the street be cleared so we can conduct our investigations and conduct our raids. And they never see police officers show up to do anything about it. Right. The stand down order is in effect. We're not going to respond. We're not going to clear the street. We're not going to make arrests. How many days does it have to happen before you can turn around and say, we are getting zero cooperation from the police? This is an ongoing problem. It's been going on for 10 days now. Now we need to bring in the National Guard through the Insurrection Act. I mean, what is the standard for this?
I think that, first of all, the factual predicate isn't occurring right now, and I'll entertain the hypo. But right now, we still have ICE agents engaging in enforcement of federal immigration law.
Well,
right?
Yes, but it's not without a lot of pushback. I mean, just because they can do something.
That's the First Amendment, right? I mean, and so that's the balance here, Greg. Yes, I mean, I've marched and protested in downtown LA where I know we did not have a permit, and we're walking the streets, and the cops were lining the streets and basically protecting us in doing so. And that was during the George Floyd protests. Not all peaceful protests under the First Amendment are permitted, right? Sometimes they are blocking the streets. That's probably quite a few of them. That doesn't mean that it's risen to the level of you're going to send in the National Guard.
Well, it happens every single day for weeks on end.
But it's not. And that's the issue. I mean, I have not seen any evidence that ICE is unable to do its job. Maybe it can't do its job 100% fully, right? But
right.
because balanced against the First Amendment, against the First Amendment right to protest.
It's not a First Amendment right if they're protesting in a way that's not actually protected by the First Amendment.
You don't have a personal right to break the law.
Yeah, and Rachel, it depends how you're defining the word unable. I mean, I don't think it's reasonable to define it as it has to be 100% unable. It seems to be reasonable to make it like severely diminished.
To me, it seems ridiculous. We're having the conversation of how much is enough before you send in the National Guard. And perhaps if the ICE agents, right, weren't engaging in such illegality regarding their tactics, there wouldn't be such unrest, right? So I reject the whole, these are Antifa and paid agitators, blah, blah, blah. These are American citizens deeply concerned that fundamental rights and values are being trampled upon by ICE agents and by an administration, that ICE agents who aren't being fully trained, who aren't following protocol in the first place, and are being under an inordinate amount of pressure to get numbers. That is such a dangerous situation. No, of course, Greg, we don't have a First Amendment right to break the law, but do many protests that are part of First Amendment right to assembly, do they occasionally break it? Because you said they're blocking streets.
You're saying occasionally, but this has been going on for like a weekend.
And it's also dangerous because I think there's a mindset among protesters that they can do pretty much anything as long as it's labeled as a protest. And that might be, I'm not saying at all she deserves it. Don't take me wrong, but that might be the mindset that got Renee Good killed. And you see, like in the opening video, we see these people attacking armed ICE agents, and it's like,
well, attacking armed ICE agents is assault and battery, and that's ridiculous, right? And that should never be.
No, but the point is,
I don't think Renee Good is in that situation, right?
No. But let me finish. The reason I'm lumping it together is they're all examples of protesters not having a normal amount of fear. They think they can get away with just about anything, and that's dangerous.
Well, that is dangerous, and that's why, like here in LA back in June, I wish that Mayor Karen Bass had created the curfew had imposed that curfew much earlier. I'm like, you let this get a little bit out of control when we had plenty of LAPD officers willing and able to get this under control and force the curfew, right? People don't have a right to take over the entire city blocks. 100% get that. People do also, though, need an outlet to vent their understandable anger at what seems to be, and clearly is at times, overweening unlawful practices by the federal government. So that's the balance I'm trying to highlight, is that it's right. And so, and Greg, I take your point that, well, at what point will ICE agents who are unable to do their job, does that therefore unable to execute federal law Insurrection Act? But we still have to get to unable to do their job, right? And that is a matter of discretion for the president. And I think and that's scary to me when I think and I know we have an unhinged president, right, who really doesn't care that much about the rule of law. I hope he does. I don't think his advisors do, and I don't think he actually does. But I think if enough people push back and say, okay, wait a second, Mr. President, do you really want to go there? Which is why Mayor Fry's comments of ICE get the fuck out of Minneapolis, not helpful. That looks like they do want to impede and obstruct enforcement of federal law. And that is giving them an excuse, right? But I don't hear his chief of police saying that. I think his chief of police wants to do his job and keep his citizens safe while also following federal law and the supremacy clause and allowing ICE agents to safely and lawfully do their job. And I wish that there was a way and so I think the fact that surging ICE agents in right after Renee Good, and I will say it, I think she was murdered. I think that was a gross excessive use of force that was unjustified. But I can say that I'm not an elected official. I would much rather see a full and transparent investigation, eventually transparent, but I don't think we're ever going to see that. But by exacerbating the situation, by saying, okay, now we're going to double down, we're going to call her Antifa, we're going to threaten to investigate her partner, and we're going to surge a bunch of ICE agents in Minneapolis now. Why surge it when you already knew people were going to be grossly upset because of what happened? That to me is just like, okay, you don't get to benefit from creating a situation by making the situation worse. And so, Greg, yes, in a perfect world, in the hypothetical where local law enforcement by omission isn't allowing ICE agents to do their job because they're allowing local citizens to break the law and block streets. Sure, at some point, some responsible adult has to come and say this is wrong. But that's not exactly what's going on here, is it? We're seeing a doubling down by the administration to try to make their point and create a chaotic situation. That's not responsible. Pull back. If you think there's a bunch of undocumented immigrants illegally and even criminals that are illegally in Minneapolis, they're still going to be there. Where are they going to go? Canada? They're going to be there in a month. Pull back. Let this calm down.
What changes in a month?
Let this calm down.
But what changes in a month when you go back in a month?
Renee Good being shot and killed and gunshots to her face. That does start to die down. I mean, you don't surge ICE agents in right after that happened.
Well, I understand, but he's not coming back to life in a month, so that's not going to change.
Of course not, but passions will have died down a bit. And at the same time, enforce curfews, Mayor Fry. Yeah. Right.
I think we need a high-profile, influential person to say, "Let's negotiate." I'm not saying it should be Tom Homan, but this is the closest. This is the closest thing I've seen to it. Well, before we move on to other topics, let me ask you, Rachel. Other than the things that we've mentioned so far, is there any other realistic suggestion that you have in mind that could tamp down the situation in Minneapolis?
Sure. Well, Jeff, I didn't answer your first. You asked a two-part question. The first one was would the deployment of the National Guard actually mitigate things, keep things safer? Okay. I mean, I don't know.
Thank you for remembering. I forgot about it.
I don't know if that would exacerbate the situation, but I do think our troops, at least looking at what anecdotally of how ICE agents have behaved, I think they're more professional, they're more disciplined, they've gotten more training. They've gotten more training.
National Guard, that's when you say troops, that's what you mean, right?
Right now, the National Guard, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Governor Walz had actually put his troops on mobilization orders. I don't know. That's what I had read. I don't know. I think they were on standby, right? But your question was, what if they went in? Would that make things better?
Yeah, right. Also, the Pentagon has put some. I don't know. This is
I think that's Secretary Hegseth trying to show, trying to kiss the president's butt and get out ahead of himself.
Right. But in both cases, they're like on standby. Is the point? They're not nobody's been active.
Right. But I do think because the National Guard, one of their missions when they work for the governor is law enforcement. They receive more law enforcement training. Still not enough, not as much as Greg certainly here did, and individuals who are in law enforcement daily, and we know how difficult and challenging their jobs are, which is why I don't like to see folks that are only part-time trained in law enforcement going in. But if they're viewed with more respect and viewed
as the thing, there's not this built-in hostility that exists.
Not the fear that, because I've seen I've seen ICE agents called Gestapo, etc. If their orders will be more willingly accepted by the general population, right, and in order to create less, if there is chaos there. I don't know. We had some cherry-picked videos, but I don't know how representative that is of I'm not in Minneapolis, how representative that is across the board. But I do think there's a danger of sending in the National Guard that could be viewed as incendiary, right? And I mean, that was some of the concern in Portland, of course. So I don't know. I'm not there. I do think the National Guard is probably better trained than ICE agents. I mean, better trained as in discipline and in regarding the use of force. But and those Arctic troops up in Alaska certainly are disciplined, but they're disciplined in the use of lethal force against our enemies on a battlefield versus law enforcement type activities. That would make me very nervous to have them in Minneapolis in this kind of situation, except for like in the rear. And I think that really places them in, it makes them nervous because this isn't what they signed up for. At least with National Guard, part of their traditional mission, right, is to help the governor with local law enforcement if absolutely necessary. So the answer to that first part of your question is I don't know. I really hope it doesn't get to that point, but I'd rather see Governor Walz sending in his own National Guard, just as like I'd rather have seen Governor Newsom sending in our National Guard if Mayor Karen Bass had not imposed the curfew and things had gotten under control here in LA, because that's more constant. They have better training, and that's more consonant with the structure of our, the historical structure of the use of our troops.
Rachel, what do you think the background is of the typical ICE agent?
I don't know. I've seen these honestly, these white supremacist recruiting videos that sure sounds like they just want to recruit individuals that think we should just be a white male country, Judeo-Christian country. And the video, the music that's linked on these videos is from a white supremacist group. So it makes me really concerned right now of who's coming into ICE. I think
my understanding is they're mostly law enforcement and military background individuals to begin with. So they would have either the military training that you're talking about or the law enforcement training that you say they don't have.
So the military doesn't have standard law enforcement. I'm saying some of the National Guard is supposed to have some, right?
Because when I say military, I'm sorry, I'm lumping it all in. I'm not distinguishing between National Guard and active military. But the military forces do have military police. I mean, they do have a whole group of people that are trained in law enforcement, but they happen to wear military uniforms.
Yeah, I was in a security police squadron. I was assigned to them for a full year. So yes, we do have individuals that are trained in actual law enforcement, but that's a very small percentage of their average veteran that leaves the military. So I don't know right now who is joining, and I don't know how much training they've gotten. I heard from
Well, they're
former.
getting 47 days of additional training if they're coming with a federal law enforcement background.
Well, federal law enforcement.
If they don't have a federal law enforcement background, it's more than 47 days. I think it's 150 or something like that. But I mean, it's not a crash course. Let me put it that way.
Well, then why are they acting the way they are in our city?
Well, I think there's a difference.
Well, they're a little outnumbered right now, so that's not helping things.
I think there's a difference between the amount of training received and the type of training.
Mm-hmm.
We have a member of our audience, Rachel, who's disputing what you said. She says that the National Guard is better trained than ICE. The National Guard experience is much lower, meaning less than a working ICE agent. That might or may not be true, but what do you think? That's why I'm saying, well, maybe it is, but
sure.
What type of training?
Sure, and I think I tried to caveat myself after that statement saying better disciplined than better trained. So the National Guard would have more law enforcement training ostensibly, right, than a regular active duty troop, because National Guard members, as long as they're not Air National Guard, right, we're talking Army National Guard, one of their missions is to help their governor to conduct law enforcement when necessary. So they are supposed to have some basic level of law enforcement.
They support law enforcement operations. They don't conduct law enforcement.
Well, I mean, but they can under many states' laws. They can conduct it if the governor orders it, right? They can execute a search warrant, right? They normally don't have to, right? But they can. But I do think they have better discipline regarding the agents, like the agent that shot and killed Renee Good, yelling "fucking bitch" to her after a video. Gosh, I would hope most of our service members wouldn't do that, and are better trained at self-discipline than engaging in that kind of rhetoric, right? So that's my point about training. And they are supposed to have some kind of basic law enforcement training, as in what is the Fourth Amendment actually mean.
I find it a little odd that Mayor Fry's pre-written remarks, it was all right to use the F word, but in a dramatic situation like that, and the word comes out, and that's offensive.
Well, Mayor Fry wasn't shooting at somebody. I mean, the guy just...
No, he wasn't. That's my point. He went there with a predetermined speech, and that was part of his speech. He had time to think about it, and he chose to use that language. This other fellow was almost killed in his mind, and said something. Or at
least almost hit. I mean, it was a impulsive reaction to the car, driving dangerously.
Or it may have been, or it could have been a complete setup just to kill her because they were angry at protesters, right? I mean, that is a plausible scenario.
No, that's a theory, but I would not describe that as plausible by any stretch.
Okay. There was a report that was done by the Department of Homeland Security itself several years ago that points to the fact that there were scenarios being set up in order to allow ICE agents to engage in improper use of force. So,
well, there may be, but not here. I mean, the woman was parked sideways on the street, and they went over to deal with her. How is that setting her
right?
up?
They didn't have to go deal with her, right? They're not engaged in. They don't have the authority to engage in traffic violations, right? And unless she was obstructing,
they were not in the car for a traffic violation. They were stopping her because she had been impeding and obstructing law enforcement operations throughout the course of the day. Just be factually correct. I don't want to argue. I'm not trying to write her up a ticket for blocking the road.
She wasn't obstructing or interfering at that moment. They did not have to go up to her, and she was receiving conflicting orders of what to do. Right. But that doesn't.
Well, pick your argument, but don't pick both.
I can pick both. Why not? Right. First of all, I don't see evidence that she was obstructing or interfering at that moment.
Her car is sideways across the road.
Right. How is it obstructing them? Unless you showed that mission that they were on right at that point, right? Well, who is she blocking?
She's not like literally getting in the way of them making an arrest.
Right.
But she's creating a chaotic scene to harass them. They're in the street. One of the ICE vehicles. The reason they were there at that exact time in that spot was because one of the ICE vehicles got stuck in the snow. So she's creating a dangerous situation for them to be blocking the traffic while they're on the road trying to deal with it.
I don't see
in other words, it's not. That's different than coming across somebody and it's just simply a traffic violation. There's a context.
Sure, but my point is they don't have the authority under the law and to go up to her
Absolutely, they do.
Unless she's immediately impeding or obstructing an ICE operation. And I just don't see how that immediate component fit in there.
And
I think they could have called the Minneapolis police and say, okay, come help us.
But the Minneapolis police is not helping them. Don't we all get that?
No, I don't get that. They could have tried first before killing her.
So they don't have the right to approach the vehicle. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think they should have approached the vehicle. No.
No. That's not what I asked you. I know you said you don't think they should have. I'm saying they don't have the legal authority to it. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think in that situation they did, unless they could show that she was immediately obstructing or impeding an ICE operation.
Does the word immediately come in there? Where does it say immediately?
Greg, calm down. Let's be calm here and just look at it. Rachel, I know that you're having a little trouble seeing it. Can you get close enough to your screen? This is the statute.
You're going to make me put my glasses on.
Oh, you look beautiful.
I'm missing the word immediately somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Is this from some court decision? Where are you getting the requirement for it to be immediate?
No, it's implied, right? Where is she? You have to have intent. You have to have mens rea, right? So where is she impeding?
Well, one of the words is intimidate. One of the words is intimidate.
One of the words is interfere.
Okay. Yes. And that has to be right now. What operation was she interfering with?
Well, when you say operation, they were on duty. They were on duty. I mean, you're saying that in order to have authority, you have to have some specific operation. Isn't being on duty?
I think it's contextual, right? She wasn't charged with this, right? And she was getting conflicting orders to leave. I think them reaching into her car, right?
Well, she wasn't charged because she's dead, but that's
yeah. And I think that she was murdered, and the fact
that's what they could have arrested her for is the argument.
Let me ask you this question, Rachel.
I don't know in the whole context
if she was removed from the car, what do you think she would have been charged with?
I didn't hear, but I don't think there was where is the probable cause that she was committing this? Where is the operation that she was impeding? Maybe I've only seen a narrow, again, you asked me on to talk about the Insurrection Act, so I've not gone back and looked at any of the videos for several days, right? Okay. So I was not prepared to get into this, but I will challenge the idea that there was probable cause to believe that she violated 18 U.S.C. 111, right? I want to see more. Where is the immediate operation? Because you could say anyone.
I'm saying immediate. I don't understand the immediate.
And also operation.
You can't say an operation tomorrow, an operation the next day. It has to be.
It happens all day long.
But why are you not only immediate, Rachel? But what
I don't see the facts. You're saying that You're saying she was violating federal law all day long. I says based on what evidence?
Well, you keep saying immediate, and I don't see the word immediate anywhere in the statute.
By following them, she's impeding operations. By blocking the street, even though they weren't engaged in any kind of operation at that point, that's impeding operations. The word
several times during the course of the day, as my understanding is, she followed the vehicles, continued to blow her horn, and continued to block and get in front of vehicles to slow them down. That is obstruction. That is interfering.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be immediate. I don't understand where the immediate.
Yeah. Also, I think, Rachel, you're attaching too much significance to the word operation. Why isn't it enough that they were just on duty and she interfered with them while they were dealing with their disabled car and making it dangerous for them?
Interfering mean, right? It's blowing whistles and blocking her car and yelling at them. Is that all interference? Is that all a crime?
I think it's intimidation.
Is that exercising her First Amendment right? I mean, are we?
You have a First Amendment right to break the law.
You have a First Amendment right to protest and to yell at people and say,
"Not when the car's parked. Not when the car's
not using your vehicle in a public roadway. That's not protest."
But she's blocking her vehicle in a public roadway. She was violating Minneapolis.
No, but she did it for the purpose of harassing them.
And so we're going to agree to disagree here because I'm not moving off of this without more evidence, more facts, and a chance to actually look at all the angles of what she was doing, what the ICE agents were doing at that time, right? I'm not going to immediately say absolutely not that this is 18 U.S.C. 111. And I'd happy to give this as a hypo in my criminal law class and have my students analyze it, but I'd want to see what the facts are here.
All right.
I suspect your students would side with you if they want to pass the course.
No, of course not, because it's blind grading.
All right.
I don't grade my students on their personal opinions in class. I grade my students on their on their
let's talk about a couple of other talk about a couple of other legal issues that have arisen in Minneapolis. One being the protest that occurred in church. That was in the opening. We showed some footage there, and Don Lemon was covering it. And there's talk of something called the FACE Act. Now, it must be difficult for you to be a legal expert and be expected to know every single law in the world, which of course is impossible. I have a feeling this is something that you haven't contemplated previously, but are you aware of this story and how they're talking about the violation of the FACE Act?
No, not at all.
No. All right.
There's a lot.
It's something that was enacted pretty much in response to blocking abortion clinics, but the wording of it was also added that you can't interrupt people, you disrupt their right to religious freedom. So it's a serious federal offense, and so they went into this church and did exactly that. So, but I guess there's not much you can say about it if you're not familiar with it. You know about the story, though, right? Or was that the first time you saw it in the opening, the video when they went into the church?
No, that was the first time I'd seen it. I didn't know. I hadn't heard of anything regarding Don Lemon. What was the Don Lemon angle?
Well, he covered it, and he's saying, "Well, I'm just there as a journalist," but a lot of people hate him, so they're trying to read into it that maybe he was in on it with them. I mean, he apparently knew they were going to do it. That's why he was there. But
interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, one other thing I wanted to ask you about is, and this is involving the Renee Good shooting. Let me show you some footage here. There was, I got so many videos down there. Where is it? I saw it before. Where is it? Hang on a second. I must be overlooking it. Well, when I'm talking about,
I apologize if I got a little strong on the issue.
Oh, Greg, no need. Thank you. That's really kind of you. No,
I do value your opinion, and I don't want to seem like I was trying to talk over you, but I have strong thoughts about it as well as you do.
I appreciate that, and I love a clash of ideas. That's what America is all about. And I honestly, I had not gone back over the Renee Good scenario before we were meeting today, and maybe I probably should have. I've been writing about legality or illegality of orders again to invade Greenland, and that's what I've been focused on to get a paper out. But I mean, I take your point, right? And I've never argued that there aren't people out there that are absolutely violating the law in Minnesota and in other places, and that is up to both the local law enforcement. It's their duty and responsibility to ensure that stops and people are appropriately apprehended. But it's also up to these ICE agents not to antagonize, right, and not to exacerbate situations and make them worse, right? I'm not sure I can actually see. It's just very difficult for me to be able to see that Renee Good at that point. And again, I was reading the obstruction charge or the claim as being something very limited to the actual context at hand, right? Which was, okay, I don't see them arresting anybody if she's, whereas I could see, for example, that Minnesota, or was that in Minnesota as well? The judge that allowed the guy to escape her room, her courtroom.
Oh, yeah.
That one seemed like, of course, they're there to arrest him. You're obstructing them from doing their job by sneaking them out the back door. That to me seemed more immediate than the Renee Good situation. But again, I've only seen the snippets of where she's being shot, not what the ICE agents were doing over the side. So I will.
Yeah, I found the video. This is footage of just after the shooting. Sure. There was a physician on the scene who wanted to take care of Ms. Good, and the ICE agents blocked her. So we don't really know exactly what the timing is on this, but I think there's not much controversy. It was pretty soon after the shooting, and the ICE agents wouldn't let him do that. They said there was help coming. Here's the video.
Can I go check a pulse? No, back up now. I'm a physician.
Hey, listen, we understand. We got EMS coming. I get it. Just give us a second. We have medics on scene. We have our own medics.
Where are they? Where are they?
fucking neighbor. You caught butter in the fucking face. You killed my fucking neighbor. How do you show up to work every day? How the fuck do you do this every day? You're killing my neighbors. You're stealing my neighbors. What the fuck, man?
What is the legality and the morality of denying the physician access?
You know, that's a good question. If they honestly believe they did their own EMS, why are they going to trust someone on the side that says I'm a doctor? They don't know who that is, right? They could be a risk to them if they're already feeling under threat, which Greg has pointed out that they did. Whether that was reasonable or not, they're feeling under threat. Why are they going to allow someone to go over there that isn't properly credentialed? And in fact, they could be irresponsible by allowing someone to go over and look at her if they weren't a doctor, right? What if it's some Yahoo that doesn't
It's a chiropractor.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, I don't think they did anything unlawful or immoral by preventing that. You know, that's my hot take on it. But after 30 seconds, but I don't think they did anything wrong by preventing that guy from going over.
Interesting response. Have you ever been in a position like that, Greg, where you were at a scene somewhere and there was no ambulance yet arrived, but somebody there was a doctor?
It's funny, they don't usually step forward and volunteer their services, right. but I'm sure it happens, but not when I was there. I mean, fortunately, we had, I forget what they called it, first responder, first aid certification, which was very rudimentary. It was just the ABCs of airway, breathing, and circulation. And we were fortunate enough to have an ambulance that was in the center of town. Not being a huge town, we usually got a pretty fast response, if not from the fire department first. But no, I don't ever recall a physician coming forward to render aid, no.
I mean, what they could have done is say, hey, where are your credentials? How do I know you're a doctor? Can you prove this to me? And yes, we'd like your help, right? But maybe they didn't have the wherewithal in that tense moment. Obviously, they didn't.
But I mean, Rachel, the problem is then later on they say, well, the guy was a podiatrist, and you say, well, how was he helpful here because we had a traumatic head wound and this is a foot doctor? I mean, and I understand they have a medical background, but just by somebody presenting themselves as a doctor,
Right, which is why I'm saying they could have said, well, what kind of doctor? What's your credentials? I mean, do we have proof that you're a doctor, not some crazy man on the side of the street, right? And how can you actually help here? But I think if they thought their guys were going to get there faster than going through the third degree with this guy to ensure he was actually appropriately trained to do it. So again, I mean, Jeff asked about the legality and morality, and I don't think they did anything immoral or illegal by refusing in that moment to ascertain his credentials and allow him to go over, because they probably very reasonably thought our medical folks are going to be here any minute, faster than it's going to take us time to figure out whether this guy knew what he was.
I mean, their medical folks are going to really be, their focus is on gunshot survivability. So their medics are probably in a better position to treat the wounded than that doctor would be.
Yeah.
If they get there in time.
Well, it sounded like they were already on scene.
Well, he said that, but I don't know. From all the stories I've heard, they really weren't there.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. So
I mean, I think we all agreed that it's a tragedy, right? Whether or not it was a crime or not.
Yeah.
It's a tragedy. We have a mother that lost her life in an attempt to do what she thought she was following her values to do. And it's a horrible result. And we have someone, an American citizen, who took another American citizen's life, and he has to carry that on his soul forever, right? Which is not easy. Human beings are not designed to kill each other, right?
Can't argue with that.
I just wish the rhetoric afterwards had been what Tom Homan said and not what we've heard from Kristi Noem and Vance and et al., right? It would have been, let's investigate this and ensure that our officer did the right thing. And if he didn't do the right thing, we'll hold him accountable. Because as we know, the investigation of excessive use of police force for lethal shootings, the vast majority of them, they found that the officer acted reasonably. But that's after an investigation. That was something, one of the one things, and I'll share this because I thought it was so helpful. I wish we did it in all our cities across the United States. But when I first got to LA in 2014, the district attorney at that time had said, look, she created a prosecutorial integrity unit, a DA integrity unit. And the minute there was a lethal shooting by police, those prosecutors would show up. They were on call 24 hours a day, show up on scene, start the investigation at that point. At the end of the investigation to see if to recommend whether or not the officer should be criminally charged. That report, after being redacted for privacy purposes, the report whether or not to prosecute or not was by policy, DA policy, was released to the public. So we could start to see what the difficult decisions police officers were facing and how thorough the investigations were that justified either pursuing charges or not. And the vast majority weren't pursued. The charges weren't pursued, but we got to see a process. We had the process laid out. We got to see the end results. And so there was transparency there. Then that helped to build trust up when there was an officer involved shooting, that it was going to be thoroughly investigated and that individuals would be held accountable when appropriate. That is just shredded here. Just shredded here.
Was one aspect of that policy that the officer who fired the shot had to stay on the scene, or was that not part of it?
I don't recall, but it was something that was very comprehensive, and the release of the report was just the tail end, but it was a huge tail end part of it, because even though, again, most of these, I looked at several of them were redacted, it allowed us to get it. Okay, they're asking the right questions, they're collecting the right information. It's not just the police mafia protecting their own, again, whether that's true or not, right? But those were the perceptions, and that really went a long way, I think, to public trust. And in this kind of incident, right, even if that officer was justified in that use of force, there's going to be a segment of the American population that will forever think he wasn't justified because of the rhetoric that came out afterwards.
And Jeff, in Connecticut, we have an inspector general that takes over the investigation of any police shootings. And I think, although don't quote me, but I think within 3 days, they have to release the body cam footage of any shooting. If it's not 3 days, it's 7 days. It's a relatively short amount of time. But that was one of the rules that was drawn up to increase the public's confidence that it would be transparent.
And it doesn't seem these ICE agents, at least the ones that were on the scene at the Renee Good shooting, it doesn't seem that they were wearing body cams. What's up with that?
No, they're behind. Apparently, they're back ordered for many of the agents, but they don't have enough body cameras to go around just yet. But the other thing is, though, Rachel, is that I'm not quite sure that applies to federal agents involved in a shooting, correct? Isn't that only state and local?
Well, for ours, it was purely LA. That was our LA County.
Right. But I'm saying if it was an FBI agent in LA.
Right. Our DA wouldn't have any jurisdiction over that. Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm glad that the two of you smoothed over that tense moment we had. That's heartwarming. And because we're
just a little speed bump, that's all.
And now that we're all getting along, Rachel, I would like to invite you to join us for the next segment, if you have time and desire. We have this segment called Has It Happened to Greg? And what we do is we look at some videos of police encounters and then just talk
I thought
about
it was going to be more fun than that.
Well, we could do it naked or something. I don't know how to make it. So if you feel like sticking around, we'd love to have you. If you need to go, we understand.
I do have a young man that has a basketball game, so I'll not be able to drink my wine when I thought I would, but I can stick around for about another 10 minutes. Looking at the time.
Just let us know when you have to go, and we'll understand. Let's get to it. Has it happened to Greg? All right, let's see which one we should do first. Why don't we do this? Somebody stole an ambulance. Let's take a look.
We are on the city's west side. There is a pursuit of an ambulance that, according to the Chicago Police Department dispatch, has been stolen from Loretto Hospital. This ambulance, according to the police dispatch, fired shots at the Chicago Police Department near Central in Jackson. It just drove the wrong way down Lake Street. It has now gone around the block, and we are north on Central here from Lake Street. So I want to start you off with what we heard about 5 minutes ago. CPD dispatched a 10-1. That is a call for officer in distress. They said that an ambulance was stolen from Loretto Hospital, which is on the city's far west side by Central and Jackson. They had the 10-1 call.
I'm going to lower the volume here so we can talk over it. I bet you can guess how this ends. You don't have to be the amazing Kreskin to guess how it ends. But I guess the first thought, the first question that comes to my mind is, why would somebody steal an ambulance? It's not like you can sell it afterwards or you'll be able to drive it each day without being noticed.
Is it death by cop?
That could be. Well, or the only other thought I had was maybe they needed to steal something, and that just happened to be, what was available. But
Yeah, sometimes what happens is the person in the ambulance is already under arrest. They know they are going to be either under arrest or they are under arrest, and they probably feel this is an opportunity to get away before they end up in police custody at the hospital.
Oh, see, that didn't even occur to me. That makes a lot of sense. Now look how many cops. Is this overkill or what? I mean, I'm not saying they're beating him. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But what? Why would so many cops pile on? You only need about 3 or 4, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to guess.
Well, they were chasing him. I mean, that ambulance posed a threat of deadly harm to all the other cars and people out there on the city streets as it was evading police. So they were all in pursuit. So they all jumped out of the car, it seems.
I know, but if it were me, I'd hang back and let my colleagues take care of it if there were enough there already. But whatever. I guess that's not any.
I feel bad for that car that he rammed into. I hope they lived.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Well, if they did, if the guy was being taken.
Wow.
Jesus.
That's a lot.
Has anything like that ever happened to you, Greg?
No, I've heard of ambulances being stolen, usually for a short distance, not a long speed pursuit. But no, I was never involved in one. No.
All right, maybe for a joyride, like some kid or got drunk or something, and.
No, it was usually to get out of the hospital, just to get away from being arrested at the hospital. That was it.
Do they usually provide ambulance drivers some sort of police protection when it's that sort of a situation? When
depends on the circumstance. If the person's combative, yes. If the person is, in rough shape and seems, cooperative and really more hurt than violent, then no. Sometimes it'll be a matter of we'll follow you to the emergency room.
All right. Let's take a look at another video. This is involving a police operation to address a problem with street hookers, an undercover operation.
She picked up a girl. They made a deal, $40 for oral sex. She's leading him to the location. There's a team behind the UC vehicle that is going to do the takedown.
You are a cop, aren't you?
No, I'm not a cop.
Put that money up and that beer. There's a car behind us.
You told me we just made a wrong turn.
Yeah, okay. You were looking for Livingston.
Livingston?
Come on back here to me. Who's this fella you're with here?
He's my friend named John. He used to give me a ride to Livingston.
Okay.
Am I in trouble?
So I know you were doing a prostitution deal with this guy.
He's a cop.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know he was.
All right. Can I ask you what got you started in it?
Having nothing. I was 300
Miranda
pounds.
violation.
I lost 160 pounds. In the 8 months I was homeless, going days without eating, sleeping, showering. And I got started because somebody just randomly pulled up to me and said, I'll give you $80 for a job. I was like, okay. And it was just fast, easy money, you know what I mean?
I understand. Well, look here, I don't want you to think we think bad of you, nothing like that, okay? We want to help you, okay? So we're going to offer you some assistance and stuff, but a couple things we want to take care of first, you know what I mean? So you will be arrested for the engaging in prostitution, okay? I'm just being honest with you. What happens?
So, Rachel, what did you say when he asked her how she
It
got
was
this?
I teach constitutional and criminal procedure, including the Fifth Amendment, privilege against self-incrimination. And the minute she was arrested, right? If you're going to ask her, if you're going to interrogate her, which is who, where, what, when, how, or why, or the functional equivalent of, you need to read her Miranda rights in order for that statement to be admissible in court. So you shouldn't have been questioning her about how she got in the business of prostitution when she's already under arrest. But yeah, I find the whole thing really sad in that situation.
Right. On top of that, Rachel, this is a TV show. So,
oh, was it? Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
She just seemed like such a child. That's just unfortunate. Greg, have you ever had to do that?
Have you ever worked as a hooker, Greg?
No, fortunately, I was spared that. We did do some operations against massage parlors, which are sort of stationary hooker scenarios.
Right.
No, I mean it's very sad. It's depressing stuff because
yeah, it is. It's like, I would say, don't even treat it as a crime unless, like it's a nuisance to the neighborhood.
Right. Or trafficking.
Right. Trafficking. But I don't know that it should be like a priority for the police if it's some area where nobody even knows it's going on. I could see like the neighbors would be up in arms if there's a lot of it going on right there. But
it's usually the spin-off crimes, Jeff, that create the problem. It's the complaints of businesses in the area saying, we think there's something going on here, or the streetwalker who hangs out at a certain location all the time.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Stuff like that, I would understand.
Yeah, I mean, they're nuisance complaints, but a lot of times there's narcotics, driving a lot of the activity, and it's just not good. Then Johns get robbed, or a streetwalker gets beaten up, and it creates problems if it's left unaddressed.
All right, I kept the video inserted here because there's a part 2. Take a look at part 2.
Oh.
The girls are working in this little area. At some point, they're going to start recognizing the same vehicle pulling up, picking up different girls. So we've got a different UC with a different vehicle.
That's the same girl, though.
What's wrong with your friend over there?
Can you prove you're not a cop?
Well, how you want me to do that?
Well, you're out.
I ain't doing that.
Well, they're doing a sting. I just got arrested by the police first.
I ain't doing that. Listen, I got $40. I got to get going. You got time or on?
Eastbound.
I got kids. Yeah. I got kids to get to.
All right.
So as we were leaving the last deal, we saw one of the females that we arrested earlier, and she had been let out on a PR bond and walked down here and just got in the car with another UC and made another deal for $40 for oral sex. This will be the second time that she's been arrested tonight by a UC. So we have the takedown team here getting ready to effect the arrest on this female. She's trying to walk away.
I didn't agree to do nothing. I didn't agree to do nothing, and I didn't do anything. I said, just drop me off. I swear to God, he just gave me a ride. I already went through this. You think I really agreed to do anything?
What was you doing?
He tried to pick up my friend.
Who?
He did.
Who's your friend?
She's over there walking. I walked over to talk to him, and I told him, I said, I know you're the police. Because I already got caught earlier, remember? I'm not stupid. I knew he was a cop. But that's why I got in the car. I said, I know you're the police. He said, well, what about your friend? Can we do 40 for both? I said, just drop me off. Let me out right here.
All right, I have 2 questions. I don't know if you heard that. When she first went over to this undercover cop, she says, are you a cop? He says, no. She says, prove it. He says, how am I going to prove it? She says, take out your, whatever word she used to mean the male member. And he says, no, I'm not going to do that. So I'm not asking this question just to be naughty and provocative. This is a serious question. If it's known that by the police not doing what she asked them to do, that a cop wouldn't do that, then that sort of gives away that it's a cop. So are cops like prohibited by some policy or law from doing that? That's my question. Does that make sense?
No, I mean, it puts you in an awkward position if you testify at court, but it's not illegal to do it unless it's in public with other people watching, but no.
All right. Rachel, you're
it's not entrapment.
Like, how did I get in this sordid story?
No, not entrapment. And she was making what we call spontaneous utterances that were not in response to custodial interrogation until she had the handcuffs around her back, and then he asked her a direct question. And
Right.
she answered. He should not have asked her that direct question. He should have warned her Miranda rights first.
Well, he can ask her. It's just not going to be admissible, but he can
Right.
certainly
Oh,
ask her.
yeah, absolutely. And it's admissible if there was a public safety exception that didn't exist here, right? But if you actually want her statements to be used against her to court, but for most time, they're just going to plead anyway. They're going to plead out.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't need to.
All right, I want to start a business giving legal advice to hookers. Tell me if this would work.
I'm going to bail on this one. I'm bailing.
No. Let me ask. But I was just that part was kidding, but this is a serious question.
Okay.
Could
I've got
a hooker,
4 minutes.
It'll be quick. Could a hooker say, like, no, I can't take money for that? You know, I can have sex with you if I choose to. If you want to give me a gift, fine, or something like that. Could they get out of it that way with wording like that?
I would have to. Yeah, that's for you, Greg. I haven't looked at the statutes regarding prostitution in a while.
Well, I think you can make the arrest based on probable cause, and a jury can determine whether they felt it made all the elements of the crime. But it's a workaround that doesn't usually work. I've had people, write it down on a piece of paper and hold it up, thinking that's going to somehow get around it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Rachel, do you really have to go for time, or it was just that joke?
Oh, no, I really do have to go for time. I've got a basketball game here soon.
All right. Well, let's just tell people how they can find you on X. We flashed it on a couple of times. You're not that active on X, but you do have an account. It's
No,
Rachel
I'm not. I find it morally corrosive.
Yeah. You have a real life. You're not getting into Twitter feuds all the time. Like
I've got to take a shower every time after I look at X. I'm like, ugh.
Right. All right. But there's nothing else.
And my kids always, my husband say I should be on Instagram more, but I just, I have a hard time with doing that stuff. I find it a huge.
Why does your husband think you should be on Instagram? That's not a place for legal analysis. Just for restaurants and stuff like that?
Yeah, apparently. Well, I mean, a lot of folks, he's an elected official, and people do post about local goings on.
Oh,
I'm also an elected official, but they know how to find me outside of Instagram.
I'm sure they do.
But no, I'm a member of our local school board and proud to be on our local school board. And
okay.
So,
you have me wondering.
He's the one, because I mean, I love teaching. I love education, and I try to put my money where my mouth is. But he's the one that's on the city council, so he can deal with the potholes. I just have to deal with banning cell phones in school, which we did. So.
Oh, really?
Oh, heck yeah. Oh, yeah.
And when you say school,
ours is just kindergarten through 8th grade. And because we're a very small little beach community just south of LAX called Hermosa Beach, but smartphones and our smartwatches and phones have to be zipped up and turned off and in their backpacks throughout the school day. And, there was a little angst at the beginning of that, but really it's died down. The angst was, oh my God, what if there's an earthquake? I need to get a hold of my kid. I'm like, well, if there's a true earthquake, there probably won't be any cell service anyway. And the teachers have responsibility for your kids, and we'll take care of them. But for the most part, it's a good policy, a really good policy.
Are the kids complying? Because it seems like it wouldn't be that hard for them to hide it on them.
They're complying. I mean, we don't have cameras in the bathroom, and I'm not a fan of that. So they try to bust them out when they can, but for the most part, they're complying because it was a distraction, and kids wanted. I mean, for the most part, I mean, it's shocking, but kids like to pay attention in school for the most part. So then they'll ask for Instagram when they get home. But thank you so much for having me on, and Greg, it was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for joining us.
Rachel. All the best.
Okay, take care. Have a great night.
All right. You too. Bye-bye. All right, Greg, you want to do a couple more videos before we say goodnight?
Whatever you want to do, Jeff.
Those are the two choices, good night or a couple more videos.
Well, let's do one more.
All right. How about, since we started with prostitution, let's go to a pimp situation.
I'll take pimps for 200.
All right, very good.
Coming over. Hey, what's up?
What's happening? Why you see me walking up and you turn around?
You looking for a date? Just messing with me.
Who you with?
I'm out by myself. I don't got nobody.
Why not then? What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you? I don't know. Nobody wants. I'm just by myself.
Nobody
I take care
with you?
No, I take care of myself.
No, I ain't about taking care of yourself, though, sweetheart. It's about advancing, having more.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Like how so?
Well, because I'm sure that you're not in this game just to be bullshitting and wasting your time. I'm sure that you obviously been through a lot if you're in this game, and you shouldn't want to keep starting over with somebody that want to have more with you, that can actually show you some more, teach you more, do more with you, get more money.
Yeah?
Sometimes we also get pimps that are out here, not just Johns that are trying to get a date with the girls, but guys who are actually trying to turn these girls and get them to start working for them. These are more dangerous. Sometimes the guys will actually try to kidnap the girls or they'll be violent with them, so we got to be much more careful in these situations.
I don't know what I'm supposed to be giving you. Am I giving you all my money I'm making, or?
I don't want no half-ass hoe, you know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
You know, you paying for the game for a mother that show you how to make more money. You're paying for the instructions. You're paying for the lifestyle. There's a lot that comes with this lifestyle. And you want somebody with a proper understanding on how to upgrade you and take care of you and keep it 100 with you at the same time.
All right, well, yeah, I'm going to get back to work, and I'll text you when I get some more minutes on my phone then. All right, talk to you later.
All right, they've exchanged numbers. They said they're going to contact each other later, so we're going to let them get away and we're going to take them down.
He's telling me all about the game and everything, so.
Yeah, very good. Set up the turn on ramp.
We're trying to get them out of the area a little bit from where we've been working. Shut the car off. Step on out. You're being arrested for pandering.
For pandering?
Fancy word for pimping.
Pandering who?
That young lady you've been talking to.
I just got her phone number. I asked her. That's pandering?
When you're talking about the game that you're going to get her, come this way. You're going to help her make more money?
But how is that pimping if I'm not recruiting or trying to solicit a girl for sex? I own a professional legal service. I offer her an opportunity. So that's automatically a felony because I offer her an opportunity. I have a service.
Well, your idea of opportunity and our idea of pandering are pretty much the same thing, okay? Yeah.
So basically, when I promote online and whenever I try to get girls to work for my services, I'm pandering.
It's the way you talk.
Well, your services are with a prostitute, and you're helping her to make more money as a prostitute?
No, I didn't say as a prostitute. No one said anything as a prostitute.
We listened to you.
All right, so who said anything about prostitution, though? I never said anything to her one time about prostitution. I told her about making more money and not having to do all that work.
You spit so much game at her, you have me convinced.
See, this is another situation where, the guy was being a little bit clever about his wording, didn't say it outright, This is, like I said, I'm going to start a business helping hookers and pimps.
Right. Well, and Jeff, this was no different than when we'd have a wiretap going and somebody would say, how many tires do you need? It was the whole, same thing. I'll take 2 tires this week and I may be able to take 4 next week. And of course, nobody's talking about tires.
Oh, it's code for whatever.
Yeah. And they thought that somehow this insulated them from a conspiracy prosecution. Kind of the same thing he's doing, without saying the word prostitution. He's talking about game and making money and doing work and that type of a thing. And yeah, I don't love that case as far as a prosecution goes. I think it's a little bit on the weak side, but we all know what's going on.
Yeah, like you said, there's a difference between probable cause for the arrest and what the verdict's going to be if there's a trial.
Yes.
So maybe they won't convict him, but the police might accomplish their goal of diminishing how much of this is going on.
Correct. The process is the punishment. He'll get arrested. He may have to post a bond. He'll have to hire an attorney. He'll go to court a number of times. So it'll be a disincentive for him to continue to go out there and keep doing that.
All right. You want to call it a night, or you want to do one more? I have a good one.
Okay, if you got a good one.
It's unique. I'm trying to come up with situations that aren't the ones we've already done in past episodes.
Sure.
This is,
of course, the more unique, the less likely it is to happen to Greg. But
well, that's true. But maybe something that relates to it in an indirect way. Here we go.
And when it's done, you're not going to have an option to change your mind. Even if you change your mind, talking to him.
There's no changing. No, there's no I'm determined already. I'm positive, 5,000% sure. With me, you're not going to have a problem. You're not going to have an issue. You know what I mean? Nothing of nothing.
Okay.
It's a motive for hire?
go to the gym in the morning.
This is a murder for hire. The woman is hiring somebody that she thinks is a murderer, but it's really an undercover cop. And she wants her husband to be killed.
Mm-hmm.
Was going to the gym, yeah. I mean, if I go tomorrow, it's not going to look weird or anything. Okay. I go to the gym on a regular basis.
All right, Wednesday morning, go to the gym.
All right.
Understand?
Around 6:30, 7 o'clock, he always walks the dog in the morning.
Okay.
And he walks the dog across, like, over where the lake is, and our door is always unlocked.
I'll be in the house by 6:30 Wednesday morning.
I think she had at least 3, maybe 4 outs with her undercover to step out of this deal, and she took none of them.
All right.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, and I guess
you'll hear from me.
I'll hear from you.
Police department, open your door. Sorry, I'm Sergeant Sheridan, the Boynton Police Department. Can I talk to you?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Let me tell you something. I need to tell you something real quick here. You need to come with me to the police station. You're not in trouble. Your wife has hired a person to kill you.
All right, the first thing that occurs to me is why are they putting this guy on TV, unless he signed a release saying yes, but I don't know why he would have. He didn't do anything wrong. He's the victim.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure they would have had to get a release from him later on to show that.
Yeah, maybe they seduced him into signing the release. We used to deal with that on hidden camera shows.
Mm-hmm.
When as soon as the prank was over, usually we had an accomplice, meaning a friend of theirs or a relative or somebody they knew set them up. And as soon as the prank was over, we'd have the accomplice come out and all the crew would come out and say, "Oh, you were great, you were great, you were great." And it was all designed to seduce them into signing the release.
Very clever. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I was involved directly with a murder for hire case. And it was a young man who got arrested for raping a young lady that he had met at a bar, and was arrested, went to prison, was being held in jail until he could make bond. And while he was there, he was a cellmate of a organized crime figure that I guess went along with the idea that he would hire, he would find a hitman for him, telling him that if the victim was dead, then she could not testify him against him in court, and then his case would go away. And we introduced an undercover. I had a recorded phone call, recovered correspondence between him and his cellmate, confirming the woman's identity, a description of her vehicle, her address, all those things. And we ended up arresting him. He went to trial and he was found guilty for the sexual assault and the conspiracy to commit murder, and received a sentence of 42 years, which I think is the most time anyone ever got for one of my cases.
Wow. You know, the other thing that struck me is, aside from the fact that she was hiring somebody to murder her husband, she seemed like a very normal, nice person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, just she was chatting about anything, making plans to go out to eat with friends or something like that. I wonder how common that is among people who.
The young man that I'm talking about that we arrested, his stepfather was a Connecticut State Trooper.
So maybe it's not that odd or uncommon I guess it's pretty uncommon to hire people for murder, but among those who do it, maybe they're just normal people. Aside from that,
I don't know if I would say that. No, I don't think that's true.
Yeah. Well, she seemed normal.
I think they're abnormal people that can act normal, but that's about it.
Yeah. All right. I have more, but we'll save them for another episode.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Greg, and thanks to Rachel Van Landingham. She is a law professor at Southwestern Law School in Los Angeles. We try to cover it from all angles. Some of our guests lean in one direction, others lean in another. I know sometimes the audience is pleased, other times displeased.
I think Sharon had a very nice comment during the middle of our show tonight, but we never were able to address it. I'm sorry, Helen. My mistake.
Helen. Oh, Ms. Sheridan. What was her comment?
Yes, I forget, but when I read it, it resonated.
Well, this was one of them. This is the one that I asked. but you mean there was one Helen?
That was it. That was it.
Oh, that was it. Oh, okay. Yeah. We did get to that one.
No, I know we got to it, but I'm saying I wasn't able to acknowledge that I agreed with her opinion on that.
Oh, I get it. All right. Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Somerville John. Thanks to all our regulars. We do appreciate it very much. Please join us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. for Ask the Inspector with Scott Ritter, and then Thursday night also at 7 Eastern Time for The Whiners with my co-hosts Morgan and Ryan. Take care, everybody, and thank you, Greg. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jeff. Good night.